Hey, I am back and I feel better. I really feel better. I feel a little silly. Like the those last 2 weeks, the from the last full moon until this new moon were hard. Really, really hard. COVID plus whatever was going on in the world, with the moons, whatever wild energies were circulating. That was a really hard combination for me. Almost felt like going on a journey deep inside, and that was not a comfortable place to be because I didn't know where the ground was. I felt myself going further and further and further down. And that wasn't a terrible place to be, but it was almost like going on some kind of travel adventure, and all of a sudden there's no way out, no ropes, like certainly not any public transportation, but not even a way to find, like I couldn't, usually when I go adventuring or I go wandering in the woods, I know my way back. I can sense my directions. And if you've ever gotten lost in the woods, it's only happened to me a couple of times, but it is the worstest kind of feeling. Quick story. One time I went for a walk across the street from my house in what felt like the deep woods with my kids. I only had two at the time, and I would have had a 1-year-old on my back and then a 4-year-old holding hands with me. And we went walking. Nothing strange about that. And we were not far away from the house, but then it started snowing enough to change my orientation with the trees and the space around me. And we started circling, and I didn't want to tell the kids that I couldn't quite find the path back. And once we circled about 3 times, I could feel a panic setting in that it's snowing, it's getting dark. I've got 2 kids, no kind of survival. I didn't bring a backpack. We weren't that far away from home. And I remember that feeling of panic getting in the way of my clarity about figuring out how to solve this disorientation that was consuming me. While I was also, I'm sure, compounded by the fact that I was trying to put on a good front because I didn't want 3 of us panicking. Finally, I realized that if I simply went in one direction long enough, I was going to either hit the road or hit the brook and then follow our way back. And probably it didn't take that long to, we got back and we were safe and made hot chocolate, and it was kind of adventurous, right? I like a little bit of thrill, but not so much thrill that I feel endangered. That kind of disorientation is what I experienced by having COVID, being isolated. People were away, and I was not planning for this kind of adventure. It was not what was on my agenda, and I didn't enjoy it. And I went into this place when I got innerly disoriented, that I felt an incredible hopelessness and pointlessness. I couldn't find the why. And I thought maybe that was gone for me, that I'm going to have to start living with this new reality of not knowing, not having any sense of why, or it feels kind of like a sense of purpose, though I can't describe it as I know exactly what I'm here for or what I'm doing. But it's like an anchor point that feels like, well, at least I know myself. At least I know my up from my down. That had disappeared. And then when I don't know how much this has to do with COVID, but when I did finally test negative and felt that I could come back into the world and see people again and engage with my sort of regular life, something came back. Like, it was like after 2 weeks of cloudy days, the sun came out again. That's what it felt like on the inside. And it has stayed crossing my fingers. And that's what I'm hoping is not just my own personal little story, but that I'm hoping that something about this new moon, which is always the new moon, is like a kind of fresh slate, new beginning, ready to look at things in a new way with a little bit sort of like waking up in the morning and you're ready to go sort of feeling. Not the sluggish waking up in the morning, but the, wow, I've got something exciting in front of me today. It's the way I feel when I travel a little bit and I get away from my everyday life and I think, ooh, what is here for me? That's what this new moon is, letting us have fresh eyes and wondering, okay, we've got some stuff in front of us to attend to. We've got this big seasonal change that we have been dealing with. And there's something about this new moon that gives us a fresh way of looking at it so that we can get back into some of the difficult work that we promised ourselves that we would do, that we would look at, that would, like, even as simple as I dug my dahlia bulbs. They need to be managed properly and put into the root cellar. It's a little bit of labor, attention, consideration, and that's the sort of stuff that we have in front of us. Not that it's hard to do these things, but we'll have to set aside time and put in the labor to attend to what we want, and we remember that we want it because we feel a sense of deep inner grounding, which gives us a sense of purposefulness in the world. That sounds pretty lofty, but I think that's what we're looking at this time. So welcome back to me. I'm back. I'm here, and I'm really grateful to feel content. I feel a sense of contentment in my body. That's probably has to do with a sense of wellness. So, let's see what we've got. What is going on anyway? Hello and welcome. I am your host, Anne Headley, and this is my podcast, What is Going On Anyway, where I take some time every 2 weeks to check in on the moon. And I share what's coming up for me as an intuitive. I use my imagination and intuition to tell a story by surfing the present moment and sharing it with you. Some call this channeling, and my experience is that it's more of a hybrid, and possibly a very good way to brainstorm for the future. I hope this inspires you to look for your own waves of presence. And ultimately, I hope this becomes an internal revolution that I believe is necessary to usher us into the future collaboration of being here together. I'm especially interested in my own and others' experiences of spirituality and the question, what are we here for? What is the meaning of life? So let's get into it with this new moon. So I do feel a little silly, like I was a little kid panicking about being lost. And well, I'm sure this happened to most of us. I have this clear memory of being with my dad at the grocery store. Maybe my mom was there too, but I remember my dad. I walked down the aisle to find him and I reached up to him. And when he turned to me and I was expecting to be lifted into his arms, the man turned to me and he was not my father. He was a stranger. And I retreated there was no thinking in this, but tears immediately formed. Just no thinking, just retreat, fear, tears. And obviously I found my dad probably around the next corner. But I think about how disrupted that immediate response system has come in me. So when I have that kind of unexpected fear happens, I might get angry first. That is an easier emotion to pop up in those moments, but I still go through that same fear, retreat, tears wanting to come as a relief, as a stress relief, as a way of being really connected to the feelings that are happening in the moment that they're happening. And that disruption in that response system in me feels problematic, because I then sort of like tuck all that stuff into my backpack and say, I'll deal with it later. And then I don't know what is later. When do we deal with those feelings? I've talked myself so much out of expressing the feelings that I wonder if I would be more resilient if somehow it was okay to feel my feelings. And I know we all did. We learned that is what a pain in the ass if everybody has to feel their feelings all the time. Well, we're never going to get anything done, And I get it. Like, we don't always want to be dealing with our feelings, but I wonder if that's just because there's so much backup and that it's like, oh, we can't pull that file out right now. That's too much. And I just think, well, maybe if there's more like constant kind of dusting or attending to, that there wouldn't feel like there was so much behind it. This is exactly the same feeling that I have around the kind of tidying up I need and want to do around my house. It's like, oh, I can't get into that because if I do that, then I got to move this, and then this has to go here, and then I haven't looked behind that in a long time. I'm going to have to get the cleaning rags out, get those dust bunnies out, and I don't even want to begin that. Similar, huh? So I pulled out Pema Chodron's The Wisdom of No Escape for this 2 weeks podcast. And I thought I would read a little bit to you, an excerpt. And I think this helps me in my predicament, and I hope for you as well. The journey of awakening, the classical journey of the mythical hero or heroine, is one of continually coming up against big challenges and then learning how to soften and open. In other words, the paralyzed quality seems to be hardening and refusing, and the letting go or the renunciation of that attitude is simply feeling the whole thing in your heart, letting it touch your heart. You soften and feel compassion for your predicament and for the whole human condition. You soften so that you can actually sit there with those troubling feelings and let them soften you more. The whole journey of renunciation, or starting to say yes to life, is first of all realizing that you've come up against your edge, that everything in you is saying no, and then at that point, softening. This is yet another opportunity to develop loving kindness for yourself, which results in playfulness, learning to play like a raven in the wind. Oh, that's so good. It's so good because really at the heart of all of this, what we love, what humans love, okay, what I love, and maybe my purpose is really embedded in this answer to my question. I think we're here to play more. And I mean that really seriously, because play is only play when everyone feels safe. And so we've got a lot of work to do around safety and playing with people who want to play with us. That's like that's a real problem that I have my whole life long, is me wanting to play with people who don't want to play with me. That, like, so much rejection is what I'm saying. Like, the real painful points in my life are thinking that I want to play with people who are not interested, or I don't make them feel safe. And then I'll get in and start to act kind of like a clown which is strange. And that acting like a clown puts me in, that's me as a performer. I'm not denigrating the important work of performance that I feel is like sacred work. But there's these little edges, right? There's one edge of see me, interact with me, play with me. But we've got this giant chasm between us. And then there's the other part of I'm sharing this with you with incredible gratitude and generosity as a performer. But I just want to read this again. This is yet another opportunity to develop loving kindness for yourself, which results in playfulness, learning to play like a raven in the wind. So really there's this big understanding that I might be thinking that other people aren't feeling safe to play with me, but me cultivating, developing loving kindness for myself is the base of how I learn about play in the world. And I'm not saying like it's all up to me because I am concerned that sometimes I become overly responsible. But I don't know. I mean, that's like the responsibility to make sure that, it's like a kind of self-care that when you need to go to the bathroom, you go to the bathroom and then you can play. Like kindergarten. And when I was a teenager, I was really taken by Robert Fulghum's book. I wanted all of his books. In fact, my mother got them for me as birthday presents when I was a teenager. Robert Fulghum is the UU minister that was a writer, and he wrote All I Ever Really Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. This was pretty popular in the last century. And there was something about the tidy way of wrapping up stories and anecdotes that I found it so delicious, like kind of reading junk food, because it was like a really fast way of having a feel-good punch. And I just ate those essays up. I just loved it. And I wished that I could somehow tie things up in a neat bow. In fact, I think I was so influenced by that's my gold standard of trying to tell stories. I want them to wrap up into a neat little bow that makes a feeling, some good feeling appear. These days, if you're on social media, that same kind of tie everything up, wrap it up into a neat bow is done, and it's not true. I just pulled one up, and it was about this man who adopted 9 babies at once after his wife died. First of all, I was like, what? And it was this beautiful story, and they were all girls, and they all grew up to be wildly successful. And it was a white man adopting 9 black babies. And I was reading through, and it was like, felt good. I was like, look how unracist he is, and how the world could really be this wonderful place. And I kept reading, and I was like, this does not sound true. It sounds like something I want to hear, but it doesn't sound true. So then, of course, I snopesed it, which I do, and it's not true. And people just are, pass it from one person to the other. And my grandmother used to send me Reader's Digests, and I loved them. And there were all kinds of little pockets of stories, and my favorite thing is people would send in like a paragraph or two of some kind of sweet story. And now I'm wondering, like, do we just lie to create? I guess we do. Like, that's what fiction is, right? We're lying to create sensation and feeling. Something about these stories that like hit my heartstrings and then I find out aren't true make me so angry. Because they're good stories. There are feeling worthy stories out there to be told. Why are they messing with me like that? It makes me mad. But let me bring you back to Robert Fulghum. I think I said was because he was in my life a long time ago. He is still alive. He's 88 years old. And I just want to read you this quote from All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. You've probably heard this one before. I believe that imagination is stronger than knowledge, that myth is more potent than history, that dreams are more powerful than facts, that hope always triumphs over experience, that laughter is the only cure for grief, and I believe that love is stronger than death. And I have to tell you, as a teenager, and reading these books that he would write, the essays that would be compiled, they would make me cry, and they would make me feel hope. And I think that is the point of a good story. Now, the difference between a good story and a completely made-up story, like the one that made me really angry, is that I think it's worth looking for a place inside where it's true. And it's worth fighting for stories that are grounded in people's experiences. And also, this moon is all about telling the stories that you want to hear. So I'm giving you mixed messages. I started doing this thing that I'm sure I've talked about before. When I went through my divorce, it was such a terrible time for me. And all of my inner insecurities came out and were like a coat of many cloths that I wore. I couldn't take it off. It was so uncomfortable for me to feel that kind of rejection in my system and not be able to tame it, not be able to put it away, not be able to have it in one area but not. It was everywhere. So painful. And I started this practice of just laying in bed and saying, I love you. And it didn't matter who was saying it to me or where this voice was coming from. I said it to myself over and over and over until I fell asleep. And then when I woke in the morning, I said it as the first thing to myself. Now, I still do this because it's become a habit and because it feels good. It just feels good. And I know that this is a challenging thing for so many people to say to themselves, I love you. I mean, geez, if anybody's going to love you, it should be you, right? I love you. Why is that so painful and difficult to say to ourselves? Why can we not receive it from our own self? And we spend our lifetimes hoping that we can accumulate enough value to be worthy of saying that to our own selves. I love you. I think you're worth being here. Like, thank you for being a body and a space for me. I love you. And saying it like you would say to a small child over and over and over again as a soothing practice. And that's what this is. This is the message this time. This is the intuition. It is tell yourself the most important essential story, whether you believe it or not. And I won't get mad about it. I won't get mad about making up good stories. This is the time to tell ourselves the stories that we most need to hear. I suspect that we most need to hear from our own self that we love ourselves. And that can create some kind of seated ground, that basic loving kindness, that we can move forward and tell stories then together based on this truth, which is I am here now and I love myself and I'm going to move forward in the world from this place. Because it seems to me that when we move forward with fear as a constant buzzing in our hearts, that we make decisions that hurt each other. Okay, let's see what the I Ching has to say about that. Now, before I ask the I Ching, I have to tell you what I did. So, remember ages ago when I first started this, I felt like I had to really explain the I Ching and tell you where I was getting all of my information. And my favorite I Ching book is The I Ching by Hilary Barrett. I just love it. And I talked about that a lot ages ago. Well, Hilary also does a podcast, which I enjoy listening to. And I was listening to it the other day. It was about menopause, and I just enjoyed the heck out of it. And then at the end, she said, I do these. You just send me your question, and I will talk to you for free if you're willing to be on my podcast. And something just like a light bulb clicked off. I was like, well, I will totally do that. So I booked a time with her. Doesn't mean that she will use this in her podcast, but I booked a time with her, which is kind of a dream of mine, right? This person that has written a book that I love so much, and I'm going to get to have a conversation with her on Friday about my question. So that's a sort of thing that I can make those things happen when I feel good. Yeah. And that gives me this enlivened sense of why I think life is interesting. Because I didn't even realize that I just didn't realize that I could have a conversation with her. She was somebody that wrote a book that I respected and was on a shelf. It wasn't a real person that I could have an exchange with. And that I find is so exciting about the world, that there are people, conversations, and connections that you have not had yet, that I have not had yet, that are yet to be. There's an unfolding that's happening right in front of us, and we don't know. We don't know. So I would be happy if that ever turns into something that she puts on her podcast. I will share that with you, because that will be like one of those little joys of life. So I Ching, what would you have us know about this new moon now? What will help us understand this time and move through with some clarity? Curiously, the hexagram that we get is hexagram 30, clarity. What do you see? What does it mean? How can you nourish and sustain a high level of awareness? The ancient Chinese character for clarity shows a flying bird and a net to capture it. Birds are messengers. This one represents flashes of insight, the way things can light up and shine out clearly. We weave a net of concepts to grab the message and hold its meaning in awareness. This is not passive seeing, but a meeting of outer and inner light. Seeing the truth and holding to it with constancy bears fruit. Then the moment of insight can become lasting awareness, so that we enter into creative communication with the signs and messages around us and truly see other people. Just as a bright light needs fuel, such a level of attention and understanding demands a great deal of energy. Female cattle represent the reserves of strength that sustain awareness, along with a quiet willingness for that strength to be used and guided. They would be the support of an old farming culture, providing both food and power so that the people could develop a higher culture and a better understanding of their world. So take care of your cattle, or your, quote, cattle. Build up your reserves. As well as paying attention to what you see, nurture your capacity to see. Cultivate the part of you that shelters and nourishes new insight. Immediately, I want to say, if you are somebody who uses journals, uses journaling, uses writing, do it in this 2-week period. Pull your journal out and let any kind of insight that comes through you, let yourself write it down. Or if you don't like that kind of direct writing, it's perfect time to do that mind mapping where you put an idea, make a circle around it, and then you draw a line where you find connections and insights. This has one changing line, line 1, treading in confusion, honor it, not a mistake. Sometimes that's where we are. We are treading water, not knowing where our next handhold is. It moves to hexagram 56, traveling. And here we ask the questions, what do you bring with you into each new situation? And what does this place ask of you? So if I bring myself, my loving kindness, my care and concern for myself into a new situation, I bring my innocence with me, knowing that I have a way of keeping myself safe. What does this situation have to ask of me? The traveler is on a journey of her own, just passing through this place and staying for a while. To be the traveler means you're not at home here. You know you don't belong. Also, you have a personal direction. You have a strong personal direction. Wherever you find yourself for now, you know it does not define you. Since you are only passing through, your creative involvement is limited. You can have the small success of being well received if you fit in responsively, rather than dancing your own dance, regardless of where you are. You cannot expect to change your surroundings, and nor should your surroundings change you. It's good to be constant to your own way as you travel. I think that's important to know as we move through these times, as we move through the political arenas, as we all do, that we're traveling through these times. And so it's good to have that kind of flexibility. The best thing that a traveler does is witness and notice and see how a new place relates back to what they know about themselves. You know, we travel and we come back and we reinvigorate our home spaces. We have often a resurgence of, the familiarity of my own home nourishes me in this way and that. And sometimes we get inspired to make changes based on ways that we see other people living. So these 2 weeks, I'm offering you permission, as I often would give you this advice or this permission, but I'm offering you specific permission these 2 weeks to tell stories to yourself when you're not using them to change anybody else's feelings, but to change your own feelings. Tell yourself the most generous story of now that you can possibly come up with for yourself, and about this moment now. And notice what it does to you when you tell a generous story about the present moment. Does it matter? Does it matter what kind of imaginal world that we create for ourselves? Of course it matters, because we're trying to tell a bigger story with many other people. So we need to get our stories straight. What's the most generous story you can tell about this situation now? What if we thought magnanimous thoughts? Is that enough to change the outer world? I don't know, but maybe we could try. I want to give you the definition of magnanimous. Generous or forgiving, or both, especially towards a rival or less powerful person. So magnanimous thinking for now. Thank you so much for being here once again. You can reach out to me at www.annheadley.com. And as always, may you be well, and may you know peace, and may all beings everywhere, whether known to me or unknown, may they be well, and may they know peace. Bye for now.